Hello everyone, welcome again. This is Rebecca Skeele and we are actually on chapter 5, which is the last chapter of my booklet, Manifesting Your Sacred Ambition, Harnessing Vision and Power to Bring Your Sacred Calling to the World in Service to the Greater Good. And I want to say that chapter 5 is probably the least developed of all of the chapters in this booklet. If you'll notice on page 35, I even say to be continued. So I've really only started this particular chapter, but there are some points in it that I just want to talk about here as I wrap up really talking about the booklet in this way. I want to actually start with the study guide questions on chapter 5, and there are 3 of them. The first one is, what challenges you about announcing to the world or your friends your sacred ambition? Number 2, does how will I make money doing this hold you back? How can you not let this question stop you? And number 3, how can you take inspired action? So the first 2 questions are really the 2 points that I've talked about a little bit so far in chapter 5. The first one is having the courage to announce to your friends, to your colleagues, to your family members that you want to do this sacred ambition business, that you want to follow this sacred calling. One of the reasons, really the main reason that I started the event Your Sacred Ambition 3 years ago was to give us a safe place to be able to bring it out, to articulate it, to speak it in a safe, supportive environment, so that not only could we put words on something that sometimes is very hard to articulate, but also we would be witnessed and celebrated and supported in doing that. I have found, working with myself and bringing forward a sacred ambition business and also working with others, that we are a bit reluctant to talk about it because of fear that somehow we'll be ridiculed, laughed at, people will roll their eyes, whatever. And you know, my particular journey in doing this, I've talked a lot more about that at the beginning of the book, but remember, my sacred calling is to co-create heaven on earth, one person at a time. And the name of my business is Make It Heaven. And I do an event called Your Sacred Ambition. In other words, none of that sounds very Main Street, does it? And I cannot tell you how many times over the years when people ask me what the name of my business is and I tell them, that they kind of go, make it happen? I go, no, make it heaven. Oh, okay. In other words, the response is not exactly like they know what that is, right? And of course, you know, how would they? So one of the things a lot of times in sacred ambition businesses is that we have to do a bit of educating and explaining and learning how to talk about what it is that this really is for each of us. And this takes practice, takes courage, it takes being patient and compassionate with ourselves, so that we over time get very comfortable at bringing something forward that may not be necessarily something that anybody has ever heard of before. And yet once people start to listen or engage with me, for instance, when I talk about Make It Heaven and I talk about what I do, is then the energy starts to move on it or not. You know, not everybody's going to resonate. But when people do, they get, you know, they really lean in. It's like, wow, tell me more about that. So this is one of the keys in chapter 5 when I say, is your sacred work ready for Main Street? And the reason I ask that is because if we are reluctant, if we are afraid, if we don't feel safe, if we somehow are judging, what it is we're doing, it's not ready for Main Street. And that's the inner work that has to be done inside of ourselves as we begin to bring this out, and why it's so important. And of course, I talked way more about that in the beginning of this video series, about how important that inner work is. But that's one of the things that makes it ready for Main Street, is for you to get so comfortable with it that you can, talk about it to anybody. The guy sitting next to you on the plane. I remember the first time I ever talked about my business with a neuroscientist. I had to kind of come at it in a little different way so we could get into a conversation about it. And yet the more that I just dove in there and said what I needed to say, the more he, had more interest in what I was saying. By the end of the plane flight, which we were on the plane flight at the time, he was very interested. He said, wow, I never thought I'd really be interested in what you were talking about for the last hour, but I really am. So there's ways, that we begin to be comfortable with what we're doing in the world. And it has everything to do with the inner work that needs to be done along with it. And then the other question I says is, does how will I make money doing this hold you back? This is another big part of this, because again, we're not starting a storefront and selling a product. We're maybe not starting a business that anybody had ever done before. Who's done a Make It Heaven business before? Well, I make money doing this. And so often this question stops people right there. They just look at it and they go, nope, I can't make money doing this. And yet I want to say, wait a minute, hold on. There are all kinds of forces that start to move in the universe when we really articulate what's in our heart. And you know this. And so this again is part of this, bringing it into Main Street, is following the energy of it, the divine guidance of it, taking the step and discovering how the money will begin to flow around this particular business that you want to do, or the social initiative that you want to do. And I put a quote in here that is actually a quote for me. It says, fear of living your sacred call is not weakness. It is a message from the divine power calling you to greatness. In other words, there are lots of fears that come up around bringing forward a sacred ambition business. And fear is not saying to you, you are on the wrong track. Fear is not saying to you, oh, no, you shouldn't be doing this. Fear is actually saying to you, you are on the right track. And it is a message from your divine power calling you to greatness. Now, how do I know this? Because this is where I live and how I live it. And also working with others. And how they have seen, by working with their fear and walking through it and taking those inspired action steps, that it's like, wow, they go, whoa, I had no idea. And we don't have any idea until we start off and do that. So I'm on page 34. Well, let's start at the bottom of page 33. So when I invite those of you who hold a sacred ambition flame in your heart to step out and bring that precious flame out into Main Street, bring it onto Main Street, no wonder you might feel resistance and dig in your heels and say, no way. No way will I survive in that environment. No way will I find anyone who wants to listen to my gifts. No way I won't be laughed at, ridiculed, or ignored. But that is exactly what needs to happen if we are going to see this world shift in our lifetime. Sacred ambition businesses, sacred callings, as far as I'm concerned, have come forward, are awakening in each one of us, each inside of you, because this is what, okay, this is just what's coming forward right now. This is what's going to save us. In other words, we cannot continue to do business the way we've been doing it. We all know this. It has to shift. It has to change. We must bring forward these bigger, divinely guided memes on this planet. That's what's being called for. And as far as I'm concerned, that's why we were born this lifetime, is to do this. Those of us who feel that call. So, I want to say I know that there is trepidation. And yet, I also know that trepidation, fear can be worked with in such a way that it really becomes an ally in where you want to go and what you want to do. And then I also go on to say that, money and success, the way that the world holds money and success, the way that you and I have grown up over the last 40, 50, 60, 70 years, those are no longer tickets to freedom, and we know this. They are traps. Yes, they are pretty traps, but bright, shiny traps that can snare us into believing that at the end of the long road of a 15-hour week, 15-hour days, 60-hour weeks, missed recitals of our kids and bad health is happiness. It's a lie and it's an illusion, and we know this. So that's one of the ways that's one of the reasons that sacred ambition businesses are not done the way that main other businesses are done. They can't be done in chaos. They can't be done in high emotional, urgent drama. They can't be done in crazy deadlines or panicked cash flow crises. They don't thrive in that. Quite honestly, the sacred is just not on those frequencies. Learning the keys and practicing the skills to manifest in spirit's timing, in service to the greater good, and not the personality ego, is part of the journey of what is asked of you at this time. And I'm going to go on and keep reading on page 34. A common question that comes forward quickly after someone realizes the fervor in their heart and knows this is the work they are to do is, how will I make money doing this? And unfortunately, for many, the question stops any further exploration. What if that is exactly the question that will usher in all manner of unexpected possibilities? It can, if held as a question of opening rather than contracting. So, I have one more paragraph, so I'll just read it. It's the last paragraph of the book. Anything that has precious value also has formidable challenges. Only you can decide whether or not confronting those challenges will be a part of the treasures that you will discover on your path of self-awakening and self-fulfillment. Remember, sacred ambitions will ask everything of you. And when you give your all, you will receive the abundant riches of what this life is all about for you. Well, that ends the study guide, step by step, of the chapters in this book, but I have more. I have 2 more videos to do. And I'm actually going to go into some new material in the next 2 videos. So, again, I look forward to any sharings or questions from you. And I just wish you just the best on your sacred calling to sacred ambition journey. Bye for now.